It's a TGT first on today's show with our tactical breakdown show. Throughout the season, of course, usually you're expecting these shows to be around transfers. And of course, for most of the season, transfers aren't really a figure of imagination when it comes to football because football's actually being played, although the transfer window does feel like it does go on for about the same time as the playing season. But of course, that kind of leaves the tactical breakdown show in a little bit in reserve. So I thought let's reinvigorate it by bringing it back to its weekly glory and talk about player ratings. And not only by myself, but I'm joined by a guest. Raf, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good. I'm very good, mate. It's just going to be an exciting project to sort of see where this runs. It's not me and you always every week, so I'm really sorry. But we're gonna mix up week on week and get some different guests on. There might be days where we can't get guests on, usually when they're evening matches, because as you can imagine, trying to sort out guests at the last minute is a bit shady sometimes. But yeah, for sure, I'm looking forward to these ones. So yeah, but how have you been? You've been good. It's been a while since you've been on the show.
I know, man. I know. I've been cracking on doing bits and pieces, but I'm good, man. Eager to kind of talk about the season. I'm excited. It feels weird though, because it's just like it kind of just finished. So it's like it was weird. Like I didn't even do my fantasy team. It's all just crazy. Literally.
Well, I mean, that was kind of sorted the day after the season finished, I think, for me. Fantasy is one of the first things we do. Speaking of which, we have actually got a league if people are interested in fantasy football. Link is in the description with the code down below, so make sure you check that out and join the league. There was over nearly 200 people odd last time. I think it was more than 200 last season. So get involved. My good friend Ben managed to win it somehow last year, and he wrote an article on it, which is on the website, which you can also find by clicking the link in the description. But that's not what you're here for. You're here to talk about player ratings. And so what we've done is me and Rafa have given up our own ones, and we're going to have a bit of a chat about each one. I suppose the first one is fairly obvious to start with, and that's the goalkeeper. You've gone with an 8, which I thought was generous because he didn't have to do much, to be honest. So talk me through your choice.
So I think the main thing was the save initially for Gabriel. I think there was a lot of pressure on Leno to come into the game. A bit unfair in some aspects, but obviously, with the whole Martinez situation, I think there's been a ramped up kind of outlook on whether or not Leno was good, whether or not Martinez should be number one. So I just felt like he marshaled the defense well. I felt like that was an important save and that could have changed the dynamics of the whole game. So I felt like because he handled that well, his distribution was good, which is something that I feel like at times it hasn't been as good as it could be. But yeah, I thought that he didn't put a foot wrong. And he made a key save at a vital moment, which I think keepers need to do. So yeah, that's why I gave him an 8.
Yeah, I think I went with a 7. Kind of what the guys in the chat box are saying there is not because he didn't have to do much. You raise a good point, and to be fair, I kind of don't think I gave enough credit for that save on Gabriel, and I think that what Gabriel did there is probably one of the reasons, the knock-on effect of why I didn't give Gabriel the same rating as you did, but we'll come on to that in a second. But just sticking with the goalkeeper briefly, Martinez looks like he's off to Aston Villa. That £20 million deal is going through. For me, I think that's insane business to get 20 million quid for a player that was worth, less than 5 million a year ago. Are you sad to see him go? But also talking about the business of it too.
I think context is key with so on one hand, I'm definitely a bit sad in that I think he came on leaps and bounds. I feel like he genuinely loves the club. I feel like it may have even meant more to him to be number one than Leno. Not to say it doesn't mean a lot to Leno, but I'm saying that I think that it meant a lot to him. You can see that in the final when he cried and everything like that. But I think ultimately, if you would have told me 4 months ago, 5 months ago that we're going to get 20 mil for him, I would have bit your hand off. Having said that, obviously, when you look at some of the other business in the market, when you look at Ollie Watkins going for 30 odd million to Villa, when you look at some of the other business that's going around, you could also argue that his premium can never be higher. So we could have probably tried to get more. But I think 20 mil is about right when you think it's effectively based on the last 12 games.
Yeah, we always kind of talk on this channel about market value, and we kind of say about how the bidding club kind of defines the value of the player, because you got to see what clubs are willing to pay for him. And no bids really came in above 20 million. So I couldn't imagine you were going to get much more than that. Brighton came in, and I think that kind of helped Arsenal to solidify that £20 million valuation. So it's a good deal, I think, for us. How much we spend of that on a replacement, I think, will also have an impact on how well we can judge that sale, but fingers crossed we can get someone in quite.
It's weird. The Raya situation's a bit weird for me as well, because I just don't. If we have to pay 15 million, then I just think it's a bit of a waste. We didn't have to sell Martinez, even though I think we done the right thing for like duty of service. Yeah. You know, he was on. I think he had 3 years left on his deal, so we didn't have to. So to then spend 15 million on another keeper, I would much rather us buy a DP 4-star or. Yeah, I would rather us get like a 4-star or someone along those lines that can just be a steady pair of hands with Prem experience, and us reinvest the money.
Yeah. Anyway, we've got a bit of a tangent there, of course.
Yeah, sorry, mate.
No, it's more me than you, mate. But yeah, no, it's one of those things with the news breaks, and you want to talk about it. So moving into the defence then, and the back three that we start off with, Holding, we've both given him an 8. He was kind of a player that a lot of people would have been okay with seeing move on, but played in the semi-final, played in the final, and played in this game as well, and has looked solid. And I couldn't fault him. And then not only that, but he turned very briefly into Holdinho, the keepy uppies. I mean, he was great, wasn't he, in that game?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't put a foot. I mean, there was a couple of misplaced passes, a couple of long balls that went awry, but I mean, in general, he's defensively was good. You felt like he kind of marshaled the defense a little bit, which was a different side to him. Obviously, Gabriel's coming into a team brand new, doesn't really speak. You can tell he can't speak English. So I think that overall, I think he marshaled the defense well. I think the way that Arteta plays, which is very interesting. In terms of the 3 at the back when we defend, and then moving to a 4 at the back when we attack, I think that he was pivotal to that in that kind of David Luiz role, and I think he done that really, really well. So I was pleasantly surprised with. Well, I don't even want to say pleasantly surprised, because I think of late he has actually played quite well in the last couple of games. So I think, overall, I think 8's a solid performance.
Yeah, let's just throw into the chat. I should have done that really for Leno, but we'll start off with Holding. I mean, Mike Hernandez says 8, Epidemic says 7, Omar says 7, Richie and Owen both said 10 just for the keepy uppies alone, which is fair enough. Jamie says 7. Balaji says deserves a solid 9. So that's very nice of being generous, I think. Arsenal Granny says 7. AM says 6. For me, I think when a defender gets a clean sheet, it's hard to rate them below a 7, to be honest. But I thought he dealt with everything that was kind of asked of him. And MYT says 7.5. We don't do 0.5s over here. It's too. You get into little things between them, but yeah, intricacy is a great word. Big Bob always gets a 10 from Daddy, he says, which is completely fair enough. Let's go on to the next one, which was your man of the match and goal scorer on his debut, Gabriel. I went with an 8. Just to throw into the reason why I didn't give him a 9 was kind of the slow start to his time. There was some issues at the beginning where I genuinely there was a weight in my underwear, shall we say, when some of the things that he did in the game was rather risky. But he grew into it, kept a really solid clean sheet. I think he's going to grow into this kind of Arteta mould of dealing with everything that's kind of thrown at the defence, heading everything away. But you gave him the man of the match as well and a 9 rating. So talk me through that.
So for me, again, context is key. So He's coming into the league, bearing in mind he hasn't played for 6 months. He's coming into a team, clearly can't speak English. It's his first Premier League game. And I felt that the way that he kind of imposed himself on the game, I feel like his overall passing and distribution, I feel like that's why I'm giving him a 9. So I think obviously you could look at the slight mistake at the beginning. You could argue that it was Leno's starting position wasn't as good as it could have been, and then it was obviously just a miscommunication. But I feel like his one-on-one play, some of his one-on-ones against couple of the strikers or the attacking players, his heading ability, his general distribution. I just felt like, I think the context-wise is why I'm giving him a 9 more than anything. It's a solid debut. I think you can't understate how big coming to a league after playing 6 months, hardly any pre-season, can't speak the language and still put in that type of performance and score.
Yeah.
So that's why I gave it to him. That's why I edged it for him, for me personally.
Let's pick out some ratings from the chat. Epidemic says 9. Callie says 9. Rydog reckons he was about the same as Holding during the game. Omar says 8. Nico F says 8 for Gabriel. He should have shouted in Portuguese at Leno. After that little sort of miscommunication. Balaji says Gabriel didn't play a competitive game since March and had no pre-season at all. So as you said there, context is really key when talking about these. Richie says 9 for me as well. Very solid after the shaky start. Khalid says 9. There was always going to be a bad difficulty to the communication side of things. And I think that will improve. And there was an interesting picture in training that was Holding and Gabriel together, having a discussion about something. So they're building that up already. And I think that Gabriel will obviously, he's young. He's got a long-term contract. It's going to be one of his priorities to learn the language as much as possible. So he's got that better communication with his players. Let's move on to, sorry, Raf, go on.
You just got to quickly think as well, just in terms of the comment, if he was the same as Holding and he scored, then you might be able to just edge it slightly. I do think they were similar in terms of ability. I just think Holding's used to these English, used to the league, used to the team, and I just think that just edges it slightly. But go on, sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Great debut performance. I mean, you couldn't ask for much more. A goal and a clean sheet for a centre-back signing. People were saying, and to be fair, when we were doing the preview show the other day, which unfortunately you weren't able to join us for, some of the comments are about how we want an exciting signing. And I genuinely look at Gabriel as an exciting signing because
100%.
We've craved us to spend money on like a high-rated centre-back. We've spent money before on centre-backs and spent a lot. You look at Mustafi, cost more than Gabriel did, but it was kind of an expensive fee because that was the kind of the going rate for centre-backs. He was just a World Cup winner at that point as well. And when you look at what we've got for 27 million quid, the age that he is, with the skill set and the attributes that he has, I think it's an absolute winner of a signing.
100%. And you got to remember, Mustafi was bought. It was kind of a desperation signing at the end of the transfer window. We had bid 19 or 20 million and it was rejected right at the beginning. We went in for Manolas as well and they rejected it last minute. So Mustafi was very much a kind of desperation signing, which I think was a reason for the fee. But I think it's an exciting signing personally. I think Arsenal fans, we can get carried away with names and sensationalized names. Like Partey's the latest one for me, where we need Partey, we need Partey, we need Partey. No, what we do need is to address the issue.
We do need
Partey, I think Partey is the best option, but I think more than anything we need to address that issue. Similar with our, sorry to digress, but obviously we were 16th in creation of chances creation last season. So we clearly need to improve in that. So those areas need to be addressed. I don't get too caught up with names. And I think defensively, what does everybody crave for other more than a solid defender that's imposing, that's good one-on-one, that's quick? I'm very excited for that signing, and I think the games just kind of help that even more.
One of our other signings from last season that's absolutely just hit the ground running and carried that through into today's game as well was Kieran Tierney. We both given him an 8 out of 10. He just sort of epitomises the attitude that I've wanted in an Arsenal player for so long. And I think for me, it was highlighted when Aubameyang gave the ball away on the left-hand side, Aubameyang being our captain, and Tierney was screaming at him, like full-on blasting him for that mistake. And it's just, we've just kind of lacked that sort of that grit and determination in a player for so long. And it's just so nice to see someone come in who is British as well. It's nice to see that British element in the Arsenal. And I think that sometimes that goes awry. But I love the fact that we had Ramsey, who was obviously Welsh, and Jack Wilshere, who's playing in the middle of him, who's English. And just having that British core in a team, I think, is really important for a club like Arsenal, especially when you look down sort of the history of Arsenal and you look at the likes of Liam Brady. And we've had sort of, I know, not British, but Irish, but you know what I mean? Sort of from
Kenny Sampson.
Kenny Sampson, Nigel. And when we had the back four that were all English, and like it was just and I'm not coming from that perspective. I need everything to be English because it comes across as such a horrible way. But do you know what I mean? The British core, I think, is so important.
And I think what it is, and I think the British core is important, but I think more than that is just the ethos. Like when you hear about he's in training and people were they were getting annoyed because he was getting into challenges 100%, and he just seems no frills, no like bells and whistles. He is a typical old school kind of British footballer in that sense, and I think that's refreshing. I think the fact that he seems like he gives 100% all the time, the fact that he had such a turbulent start to his Arsenal career in terms of the injuries, and I just think when you put all of that into everything into context, and you look at it, and he's still, I can't even remember a bad game of his really, and I just think I genuinely think he's a top 3 left back in the league, and I think it's hard to justify it based on the fact that he hasn't been in the league for as long as some of the others. But I think you'll start to see that there's a reason why people looked at him as highly rated or even higher rated than Robinson. You know, I put him above the Chilwells. I look at maybe Robinson and Digny as the only ones that I look at that I think he's just quality. I just really think he's top draw.
Yeah, let's look at Rydog in the chat box. Always has something to say. He's kind of talking about how he thought that Tierney wasn't as good as Holding or Gabriel in this game, and I think sometimes it's you can miss sometimes these types of players that you don't necessarily see them during the game that often. And he wasn't as. And what you think of Tierney is you think of this guy whose tenacity is a strong part of his game, and the way that he plays the ball over the top, and we saw that in both FA semi-final and final for those goals. And I just think that those performances are like when Graham Souness used to describe Aaron Ramsey as sort of a 7 out of 10 every game or higher, and that's kind of what you get from Tierney, but to a higher level.
And what you've also got to remember is he's being asked to do such a pivotal role within the team. He's being asked to play as a left centre back when we don't have the ball, and then a full back when we do have the ball. You also got to look at the fact that he clamped their wingers on a consistent basis. He never got taken on at all in the game. He did everything right. Never really misplaced much in terms of passes, and I just think his role. And Maitland-Niles' role is so important to the way that Arteta is currently trying to play, and I just think that he's done that expertly. You never question Tierney, and I think that can't be understated.
For sure. Playing in a 3-4-3 formation, it was set to Bellerin that was playing on the right flank today. There was an inkling of me that maybe thought with the whole rumours of his exit, he might not be playing, but he was, and played on that right-hand side. I've given him an 8. You dropped him slightly to a 7. I'm interested to know why, and then I'll come back with what I thought.
I don't want to say there's no real reason in terms of I don't think he did anything wrong per se, but I just think that it was a solid performance. I think it was solid. I think he didn't do much wrong. I think he got forward when he could. I think he linked up quite well with Willian as well. I just don't necessarily think that he was tested. I think if you looked at the way that Fulham played, I think Doc came down their right and Tierney's left. So I think a lot more was asked of Tierney defensively. And also, I think that, I just think it was a solid performance, but I don't necessarily think that he stood out maybe as much as the others. But nothing against his performance. I just think it was a solid performance.
The reason why I put it as an 8 is because I've been looking for him to link up with the right-hand side for so long. And when Pepe was there was just something that didn't quite click between them. When it was, who was it we used to have on the right wing? We have Theo Walcott on the right wing quite a lot with Bellerin in behind. And they always had quite a good combination of Bellerin sort of overlapping and then Walcott kind of cut back inside. And Pepe does that sometimes, especially with his left foot. But he never kind of really did where Bellerin passed to the right winger and then Bellerin ran outside and then was played the ball back to. And I saw a couple of times it happened with Willian and a couple of times in which it was the other way around for Willian to then attack the box. And I just thought those two connected so much better than what we've seen with previous combinations, be it Pepe or be it whoever it was. I think that was with
Nelson,
Nelson as well. So I just see that connection as better.
Yeah, I do think partly that was due to Bellerin coming back from injury as well. If you think about it from the whole, just him in general, his dynamism and just his athleticism and his dynamism seemed to kind of dwindle a little bit last year when he was coming back. He kind of missed a step. He looked a little bit slower. And I think now, as he's starting to get into kind of more form, as he's probably a bit fitter, as he's had a bit more of a preseason, I think he's probably more capable of doing that anyway. And I think Willian's an intelligent player in terms of he will look for him in that way. Whereas I think... so I think he may have benefited from that. But I think it's partly to do with the fact that he was only coming back from injury and was a little bit off the pace.
Let's go into the midfield then, of our midfield, centre midfield two, I should say. The first of which is the Egyptian Thomas Partey. I mean, what a renaissance for this guy. I mean, he was on loan with Besiktas. Everyone had written him off and just assumed that he'd be sold. And Mohamed Elneny just looks confident. He looks astute. He looks mature. He looks like he knows what he's doing. He's not overruled by the occasion. And he just played a solid 8 out of 10 performance in midfield that you couldn't really floor.
Yeah, I mean, I like Elneny in terms of the fact that everyone speaks highly of him at the club. Like, you hear the people talk of him and they seem to speak very highly of him as a person. He never complained, never really, you never hear issues from him, never seemed to be like a bad egg when he wasn't playing. I honourable mention, like, for me, he was almost close to being a man of the match in that what maybe I expect of him and the performance that he's delivered. I think he did well. He didn't really put a foot wrong passing wise. I think he covered when needed. I think that this game was more suited for him than maybe even a Ceballos, in that there were points in the game where you knew that Fulham were gonna come out and try and impose themselves in midfield. Maybe we're gonna try have periods where they have the ball. It's the first game of the season. They're known for being quite good on the ball anyway. So I think this was a good game for him. And I think it's very underrated that he is quite a good passer of the ball. He's a good passer of the ball, and he takes up good spaces, but also he's very good at shielding the midfield. Obviously, the Basel connection with him and Xhaka has always worked okay when they've played. I think the issue is they never really play that often, and sometimes when you're asking one of them to be the attacking presence, I think that's where the issue may come. But no, honestly, hats off to him. I think he did really well, and I wouldn't be angry at him staying in the squad and being like a backup player for Thomas Partey.
No, and I think there's a couple of things to talk about in regards to sort of his price and where that comes from. And if we were to buy a Partey, thinking we've also got Ceballos in and Ceballos look live, and we'll come on to him when we get there. But I just look at that Xhaka Elneny combination, and the reason why I was so sort of against it at first is because me and Judges went to Crystal Palace a few years back when we lost 3-0. And Elneny and Xhaka both played, and they were horrific together. Like, it was one of the worst midfield performances. They were cut open by a Palace side that wasn't special at all. Yeah. And it just goes to show what good coaching can do to these types of players and how far they've come. I suppose we should go on to Xhaka and sort of do this in combination. Xhaka, we both gave, again, same as Elneny, 8 out of 10. And the Swiss midfielder is now just so integral to what Mikel Arteta wants this team to do, the way that he plays the ball wide, the way that he drops in. The amount of times I saw him drop into the back line to be an option for those centre-backs, because those wing-backs push so high up the pitch that he has to be so aware of what's behind him, and he does that really, really well.
I think if Xhaka was a new player and he came in the day that Arteta came in, then everyone will be saying that he's world class, and he's literally probably been the most, alongside Aubameyang and Tierney when he's come in, he's probably been the most consistent performer since Arteta has come in. Pretty much since the debacle, really. He's been very consistent. I think passing wise, his retention of the ball was good. His ability to find space and be an option, not only for the midfield, but obviously the defense as well. Like you said, him dropping in to become like the the kind of
Sort of third
almost
centre-back when...
third centre back, also dropping on the left at times as well, and done that, and his tactical awareness has just come on display since Arteta's come. And I don't know, maybe it is you don't want to knock Emery all the time, but maybe it's the communication was an issue, because it just seems like night and day in regards to him understanding his role within the team and how he's been able to kind of do that. So yeah, another solid performance.
Yeah, for sure. And then when you look at sort of when we talk about him becoming that third centre back, he becomes the third centre back because he enables Tierney to push up as well.
Yeah.
And we know how dangerous Tierney can be on the left hand side. And actually, Tierney got up into the opposition half so often. And when you consider that he was starting the match effectively as a centre back, that's all down to Xhaka's discipline to drop in and realise the space that needs to be filled. And without that, Tierney can't be anywhere near as effective. So those two have really formed strong combinations together for sure. Let's move on to that left hand side then, who was kind of doubling up with Tierney at times and overlapping really nicely. And Mainsley, we both given a 7. I didn't feel he was as good as Bellerin on the other side was today. But again, another solid performance. He's coming back off, obviously, being included into the England team, which is amazing. And I mean, the fact that 2 weeks ago we were thinking this guy is going to be going off to Wolves for 20 odd million quid, that seems miles away from that now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, obviously, congratulations on the England cap. I think it was well deserved. Weirdest England team, but that's for another story, another day. In terms of mainly, I felt like the only reason why I didn't give him higher was because I felt like there were little times when he lost the ball. There was little bits and pieces where the link-up play could have been a little bit better, but again, I think that the actual role that he's playing within Arteta's team as being on the left, then coming inside and being like a kind of inverted centre midfielder and allowing Tierney to break down the wing. I just think that his role, he's really been like really good in this role. I think this is probably one of his weaker performances when you kind of put in the cup final maybe and the Community Shield and the semi-final. But I still think that he was solid. And like you said, I think it would have been a really, really poor decision if he was sold. Personally, I think that the versatility that he provides in the team can't be understated. And I just think even in the fact that he's been able to kind of switch positions during the game, admittedly to the position he probably wants to play, but the fact that he can go out to be a left fullback or a wing back, let's say, and then kind of become an inverted centre midfielder during games. That tactical nous is can't be understated. So yeah, while it wasn't his best game, I still think it was a solid performance.
Yeah, I want to address Freddie McNay's question there, and you kind of answered part of it as well. I think there's a bit of a triangle going on between him and Xhaka and Tierney, where Xhaka kind of drops in, Tierney becomes that left wing back, and then Maitland-Niles inverts and goes to become that centre midfielder alongside El Neni, because Maitland-Niles can offer you more going forwards than, say, Granit Xhaka can. And that was kind of what he did. I'll be interested to see his heat map when it comes out later today on Wisecout, if it hasn't already. I will have a check in a second. But he just looked so sort of energetic. I think that the calls for giving him a 6 are a bit harsh. I know he wasn't effective to like a massively high level, but actually what he provided was the tactical nous, and he did exactly what he was asked to do by Arteta this game. And that's why I gave him the 7, because I thought the energy that he had, the discipline he had for his position was just clearly spot on with what Arteta wanted him to do.
And also he's, sorry, just to cut you, also, his runs off the ball, I think, again, can't be understated. His movement and his runs off the ball. He was trying to run in behind, and that was actually creating space for other players. And I think that that's one of the things that Arsenal severely lacked under Emery, and also even in for Arteta in the last couple of weeks, or some of the weeks in the league post-lockdown, when we were struggling to break teams down that were playing the low block or kind of sitting behind the ball. I think it's very, since Ramsey, we've kind of struggled with midfielders kind of running beyond any strikers. And if you watch the game back, there was a lot of times when Ainsley kind of pushed beyond strikers, and he tried to kind of become another attacking option. And I think that created some space for others. So yeah, so that was, I think overall, he's tactical. This was a tactical game for him, and I think he did that well.
I don't necessarily agree with Rydog's statement about the 3-4-3 because I think we've kind of highlighted how Xhaka becomes the third centre back again, and Bellerin and Maitland-Niles and Tierney push on. So we've always got that three. There are times when Xhaka is in the midfield, but that's solidly when Tierney is usually back. Or Maitland-Niles even drops in. It's really next game. What I suggest people do is have a look at that left-hand side, see how Xhaka's movement coincides with the movement of Tierney and Maitland-Niles, if it is those three, of course, that are playing. But I just think that what Arteta's managed to do with arguably not the weaker side, I think with Aubameyang there, it's certainly the stronger side, but what complements Aubameyang, and that's kind of the direction that we're going to go next with our next rating, with being Aubameyang, could complete that left-hand side. 8 out of 10 because he scored an amazing goal. But I just thought that's what, like, it sounds really bad, but that's what he's meant to do, isn't it? That is what Aubameyang does best. Like he scores goals. And I felt that was like the most influential thing he did during the game, along with a nice sort of setup pass for Xhaka that led to that. I think it was that led to that first goal from Lacazette. So he had a solid game. He did what he was meant to do, but beyond that, I thought it was just classic Aubameyang, really. Yeah,
no, I agree. I don't think it was a standout Aubameyang performance per se, but I think that it's exactly what he says on the tin. He scores goals. It was a quality goal. I think when he's in position, he scores. I think his work off the ball was good. I think he works for the team, which is amazing. And this is the only thing and the only issue potentially, and it's not even an issue, but the only thing that maybe I would look to change if I was Arteta, in that sometimes I feel like Aubameyang playing on the left, that we have another scoring option, but we don't have another creative option in the wide areas, in a sense. And I feel like he would score wherever he played. So I feel like if you played him through the middle, I think he would score more goals or just the same amount. Really? But yeah, I do personally. I think when you look at when he played for Dortmund, although he played on the left at times, when he played through the middle for Dortmund, he was his highest goal scoring tally. And I think when he's played for Arsenal, he's also scored just as many goals playing through the middle as he has on wide. So there's nothing for me to suggest. I get that we would maybe lose the hold-up play that Lacazette brings, and obviously it's harsh because he scored today. But I think that if you had another, maybe not a Zaha, but a Zaha type, a Depay type, it would add another creative influence, and I think Aubameyang would just score regardless. So that's the only thing I would say when he plays on the left, is that I don't think we're as creative as we could be, but he scores goals, man. It's hard to knock a guy that scores so many goals and works so hard for the team. He's a real leader by example. I don't think he's the most vocal captain, but he leads by example, and yeah, he's infectious in that he's always smiling and he's always scoring.
Yeah, he is. I think you raise a good point in terms of playing through the middle. I think if that happens, he needs to have someone as a number 10 behind him to be that creator as well. It's all good having like someone on the left wing that can also create, but Aubameyang through the middle needs to be played through, and to do that, you need a number 10 rather than creative in so much the wide areas. The wide areas are going to offer you the cutbacks and the low crosses that Aubameyang will feed from. But in terms of when you're sort of backs against the wall and you're sort of you've got the back line for them is camped in their own area, and you're passing around the edge of the box trying to break them down, that's when you need that number 10. But when we play with this current system, it's really easy to get in behind with him on the left flank, because he cuts inside, Lacazette drops back and becomes that hold-up play specialist, and he can exploit that space so well. And I think when you talk about creativity, I mean, there was only one man on the pitch that was providing the creativity today, really, and that was our new boy, Willian. I've given him my man of the match personally. We've both given him a 9 out of 10, and he was, I mean, as debuts go, I mean, the last great debut I remember was, the home debut, I think, of Sabas against Burnley last season. I'm trying to think of a debut that was as good as this one in recent memory, and I'm really struggling because Willian just came in straight away. 3 assists, arguably 3. I think the first one is very generous.
I would say 2.
Very generous, yeah. So we'll go with 2. But still, he was so influential in the game. He's already been playing in the Premier League for Chelsea in a very different system. He just kind of weaved what he does in the play and having that creativity, and it creates a problem for Pepe as well to think about where he's going to come in. And I'm excited to see if all four can play together with Laka, Alba, and Willian behind those two, with Pepe on the right hand side as well. So there's lots of possibilities, I feel, with Willian coming in. And I feel like, actually, and I don't mean to be this guy, but the chat box owed me an apology because when we were linked to him, I was like, this is a good signing. Like, he adds so much quality and depth to this team. And everyone's like, no, we need to get Coutinho. And I'm like, no, trust me, Willian is going to be the guy. And he's kind of showing that already. How impressed were you with him on the first day?
I was very impressed. More impressed than the picture that you got of him. He looks like he's about a 70-year-old grandma in that.
He does, doesn't he?
Oh, like he looks like a Kumo, and if he let his hair down in the Street Fighter, he just looks terrible. But yeah, no, I thought he was really good. I thought that he did everything that you could ask on a debut. I think, I would say 2 assists. You could say 2.5, but to be honest, I think Lacazette kind of spared his blushes a little bit because he pretty much missed from point blank range.
We don't talk about that,
though. Yeah. But I felt that what was good about him is that he just did the right things well. I feel like he didn't lose the ball. There's a stat going around. Apart from crosses, in terms of his pass completion, it was 100%. I think he does a lot of the right things well. I think that he drove when he needed to. He put players in when he needed to. I think positionally he was good. He defended well. Obviously he's kind of been renowned as a good defensive winger in the sense that he will press, he'll track back, he's strong. So all of those things he did well, which is something I think Pepe could work on in that sense. But one thing I do want to do, although it's going to be hard to not draw comparisons, I don't think that it's a bad thing that we've got another option. I look at City, for example. Nobody ever looks at Mahrez and Bernardo Silva and Sane and says, oh, Mahrez played well. Oh gosh, how's Bernardo Silva going to get into the team? Because I think they recognise and understand that it's a squad game, and there's going to be certain games where somebody else plays, and there's going to be other games where another person plays. In that sense, same with Jesus and Aguero. I think we need to get into the mindset of feeling like anyone can come in and do what Arteta's asked of them. And I think as long as Pepe can, when he's coming into the team. And when he came on, I think when he came on the bench as well, he showed it. He can offer something, and he offers something different. Then I think that he's going to play his games, and we can, as a squad, just be improved. But obviously, in terms of Willian, the ball that he played over to Aubameyang, the delivery, set pieces, he hit the post. He did all the right things. He's linked up with Bellerin. I think you couldn't ask for a much better performance, to be honest. I would say the only thing that I would say, and it's something that some of my Chelsea mates say about him, I would say his ability to beat a man is a little bit, when he stands a man up, he doesn't really, he shimmies to the right and kind of hits the first man a lot. And that's the biggest criticism that people have of him. And I think that was on display a little bit today. Like the 2 times, I think it was 2 or 3 times when he had the chance to take on the fullback, he kind of shimmies a bit, shifts to the right, and then just kind of low cross, and he just hits his first man. And I think he's got I would like to see him centrally, honestly.
That's what I was about to say. I think that will really help him be more or less predictable in his play if he's shifted centrally, because that will mean that, because if his left foot isn't the best. Like, I think that's fairly clear. His right foot is much, much stronger, and that's why he always likes to do the step over and then try and go to the byline to then cut the ball back. But if he's in the middle, it gives him the opportunity to cut left, but also be able to use his right foot to pass like between the lines and feed sort of that left winger through. So when and if and when that does happen, I think that's really kind of key to what he's going to do.
I think his biggest strength is probably driving with the ball, and I think so his link-up play, but also driving, I think that would be a lot more prominent if he was able to play centrally, and I think he's good enough to do it. So, and obviously for Shakhtar, that's he played as a number 10 for Shakhtar. I think he can play as a number 8. So, yeah, so I would like to see him there. But apart from that, I'm probably being uber critical. But he was solid. He could have easily been man of the match.
Yeah, for sure. Last player then that was starting, Alexander Lacazette. We've both given him an 8. I think that it can't be understated how good it is for his confidence that he's got that goal away from home in the first game. I know it was scrappy. I know it was like covering Willian's blushes, but it doesn't matter to me. He had a decent game. I was tempted to give him a 7. I was on the edge of giving him a 7. But I just felt the goal away from home and the way that he held the play up at times, some of the passes out to Bellerin when he switched, it was really good. There was a couple that he did misplay. But I just thought he did what Lacazette does best, really, until he came off. And that is really important to see that he's playing well, because he's always been linked with this move away. We're now being linked with Edouard from Celtic as well. And he was clearly irritated during that interview that he did with L'Equipe, where they asked him about the Thomas Partey thing. And I thought it's just good to see your striker that's scoring goals. And that's what you need to happen.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, I'm actually more happy that he scored a goal like this than a typical kind of shimmy, shift it, hold up the ball, shift, and then bang it. Only because I think one of my biggest criticisms of Lacazette is he doesn't score enough easy goals. And I think that's the main reason why he doesn't get 20 goals a season, because he doesn't score many tap-ins, he doesn't score rebounds. All of his goals are like really good finishes. And I think when they dry up, he doesn't score. His movement could be better. And I think that scoring goals like this are the goals that you need to get you to the 15, 20 goals a season in the league. And I think that's where he really needs to improve. But I think in terms of this game, he held up the ball well. He scored a goal. His link-up play was good. I think he was making more runs. I saw runs in behind, which I like of him. You know, he worked hard. So I think overall it'd be tough to give him less than that when he scored the goal. And I think that goal kind of eased kind of, not, I wouldn't say pressure, but it was good for us to score at that time when we did. And I think it just gave us a bit more confidence to kind of impose our will on the game. So yeah, it was an 8 for me.
Let's go into the bench then, and looking at the subs. There's not too much to talk about in regards to this, so we kind of put them together. I say there's not much to talk about. There was something pre-game that we should talk about. That's why I've kind of included this image as well, because Danny and Eddie. I don't know if you've seen it, Raf. I'm sure you have. Yeah. They had a bit of a clash in the warm-up, and it was. I like it because I think it shows that obviously they're at full tilt, full time, and that kind of is what happened. They made up afterwards. If you listen to a lot of like football podcasts and you hear like ex-players talking about dressing rooms and stuff, this stuff happens all the time. Players clash all the time because they're so keen to win, and they're also so keen these days to look after themselves. If someone comes in at you with a heavy challenge, it's gonna annoy you. And I think that's what happened with Eddie Nketiah and Sabas. But of the subs, just to give you my take. Pepe looked bright at times when he came on. He was taking on players, getting to the byline, putting some crosses in. And Nketiah didn't really get a foot in on the game for me at all. But Ceballos, I thought, was really lively when he came on. Clearly wants to get into the team. I think clearly was probably frustrated, and that kind of showed in the pre-game warm-up that he wasn't starting, and he wants to get him back into that team as soon as possible. And I think it's going to be a real tussle between him and Elneny until Arsenal bring in another centre-mid to see who starts. But it's great that we've got all these guys desperate to get into the team now, isn't it?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that was obviously, it looked like maybe Eddie was winding him up a little bit, but I think that, and he's obviously reacted. It's good and bad, because obviously it's good in that his passion, and you want him to, you want him to hate not playing. Like players that don't mind not playing, it does seem weird to me. Like, you know, he seems like someone that wants to play every single game. Even when you look at the loans, his main thing was, I just want to play. And I think it just shows in the way he's probably frustrated and angry, feeling like he should play. And everyone should want to play. Everyone should have that passion. But at the same time, he could have injured Eddie if he went in and he actually caught him. Exactly, so you got to kind of relax a little bit. But the reason why I just gave everyone standard 6. I feel like when you win, instead of giving standard 5s, you give standard 6s. I don't think anyone had I don't think anyone had a chance to really impose themselves on a game, and nobody did anything wrong. I think Pepe was definitely bright. He could have set up Lacazette. I think again, if Lacazette was just a little bit, or was it Aubameyang? One of the two. If they were just a little bit if they were a little bit more on their toes, they could have got in ahead of the defender. He looked bright when he came on. Yeah, he was trying to take guys on. He was trying to be bright. I think Ceballos again came on, the little nutmeg, the little flick round the corner. I think he's just quality. He's just quality. But I feel like in terms of actually imposing themselves on the game, I don't think they had enough time. Eddie as well ran around a little bit. So I think Eddie was probably the worst, but I just think standard sixes, to be honest, for me.
There's one more man that we got to talk about. It's arguably the most important man of the Arsenal right now, and that's Mr. Mikel Arteta. I went with a 9. People know I love Mikel Arteta. I think it's fair to say there's not going to be too many times where I will struggle to be critical of him at times, but it's important that you are. And so I'm interested to sort of get the thoughts on your 8 reasons behind the 9. Is I thought the way we lined up, the way that the team was coached defensively, how the players were interacting with each other, the transition, the cohesion between players. We talked earlier about the triangle of Xhaka, Maitland-Niles and Tierney. That's clearly a tactic that Arteta has worked with them on the pitch. The way that El Neni's come in and improved, the way that Holding is holding his own, the way that a player like Gabriel could not play a competitive match since March and can come into training and then perform that way. Part of that, and the credit goes to the manager for that and coaching them this way. So for me, he gets a 9. Talk me through your disgusting rating of an 8, Raf.
To be honest, I could have easily given a 9. It wasn't any it wasn't any knock on Arteta in terms of what we done really. All it was just, I would say, the level of opposition. If we're honest, Fulham the favourites to go down, probably will go down. So I felt like he did everything right. I loved it tactically. I think it was amazing. I loved the fact that, people often forget when he first come in, he was playing with the 4-3-3 with the 8 when Ozil was playing with an inverted 8 on the right hand side, and Xhaka was going into the left back to allow Saka to go up. So, and he was doing all of that, and everyone was kind of marveling. I think Ainsley Maitland-Niles was playing as an inverted right back when he first came, and everyone was really looking at that. But if you look at it now, he's actually changed it again. So you see, and obviously we've gone into it a little bit already, so I don't want to go over it too much. But you can see tactically, he's a very astute manager. I feel like the way that we are preserving ourselves in terms of the press, like we press sometimes, and then when we don't press, sometimes we contain. And I think that's just to make sure that our energy levels we don't burn ourselves out towards the end of the game. And I think all of those things were amazing. I think that the way that we set up in terms of the team, I can't fault him in that. The only thing I would say was just the fact that it was Fulham, and although it was an excellent performance, and I do want to say as well, there were games that we were dropping points, we were drawing or losing last year, and people don't realize we drew. I think we lost less games than City last year, but we drew 14 games. So these kind of wins are very important. Clean sheets very important. It was just the opposition for me. That's the only reason why I didn't give him more. But he could easily be a 9. I'd give him a 10 every week if I could.
Of course, I love that. But overall, it was a great performance. We're going to discuss it more on the main podcast tomorrow. As always, we do a podcast on a Sunday looking at the week's events and looking ahead to things. So TTT podcast will be back as normal on a Sunday, unless there is a Sunday game, in which it usually shifts. Monday, we've got a tactical breakdown podcast with myself and Drew. We'll be looking at some of the more in-depth tactical side to the Fulham victory. And then we look ahead to the next game, which I believe is West Ham. Is it West Ham, or am I getting that completely wrong? I feel like it is West Ham, but I might be wrong. I'm going to check now, because otherwise I'm just going to look completely idiot.
It is West Ham at home. It's West Ham at home.
Yeah. So, and then we got obviously we got the Leicester game and then Liverpool. So it's
tasty.
It's when we have one of the worst. Yes, exactly. And I think that this week in terms of transfers is going to be huge. If you can strengthen before the West Ham game, amazing. I feel like we need to make sure we've strengthened with enough time that these players can transition so that they could play against Liverpool. If we're going to get anyone in, I'm not going to name any names at the fear of just giving people false hope, but it's just a case of trying to, yes, or Partey. But, it's I want to get them in before we play the biggest games, and it's important that we do that. And if you've seen from Gabriel and you've seen from Willian, these players can be signed, they can hit the ground running, and you don't have to necessarily rely on transition time, because some of these players can just adjust immediately, and it's great to see that. Raf, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you, mate. I hope you've enjoyed giving your ratings.
Definitely, mate. Get me on the tactical breakdown, mate. You know I like all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure
All that good
Andrew
stuff.
will have you on very, very soon. That's no problem at all. Fella. But yeah, you'll be seeing a lot more of Raf, I promise you, this season. I saw his tweet on social media saying that he needs to get more into his football. I think we're going to give that to you this season, mate. So if you enjoyed Raf's appearance today and you've enjoyed the show, please drop a like on the video. Please subscribe to the channel. Give Raf a follow on Twitter at Messi Music and follow us as well at the Gooner Talk TV. We'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.